We have high expectations for the Cincinnati Bengals to try to fix their team in the 2026 offseason, but we're not exactly sure if they see it the same way. And in this episode, that's what we're going to break down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals? As part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, now the #1 sports podcast network in the land. He's James Rapien. I'm Jake Liscow. We are your hosts of the Locked On Bengals podcast, covering your team every day since 2016. And that makes us your best and most consistent one-stop shop for all things Bengals this offseason. Welcome back to all the everydayers out there. And if you haven't missed an episode this week, you've heard us go through the defensive priorities, the offensive priorities. And today we bring it all together to wrap up that conversation by piecing together the priority list on both sides of the ball and figuring out where exactly we think the Bengals might see it differently than we do, i.e., where do expectations for this team this offseason, i.e., the standard, potentially diverge from the reality, as we've seen how this team conducts itself as a team builder over many, many years. And we have an idea of at least where we fear some of those gaps might be. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. If you download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON, you'll get $20 off your first purchase of tickets. And James, to set the groundwork here, before we talk about expectations and reality and where we think they might see it differently than we see it and how we think they might allocate resources versus what we want them to do in terms of resource allocation, let's just reset it here for the people that aren't everydayers and encourage you to go listen to the previous 2 episodes if you missed them for full context here. Let's run through our overall prioritization here, where we started with defense because the only position that's really competing with any of these defensive priorities is probably right guard. So let's run through and reset where we set these priorities before we discuss where we think the Bengals might diverge.
Yeah, and we differed a little on defense, but not really, because we both want the game-changing defensive tackle, and that would probably be a priority. It's just really, really hard to find, and that was your sort of tiebreaker. So I had defensive tackle 1. You had it a little farther down, but with the idea that if you can get the game changer, then go do it and make that your top priority. Defensive end, we both agree, is at the top. So guess what? Pass rush. And then for defense, for me, it was playmaking safety. You have linebacker in there. And you're right. The right guard one, like if you're telling me Jalen Rivers is your starting right guard, and it's nothing against Jalen, but he'd be the proven or the unproven option here. Well, then that vaults to at or near the top, because we know what this team looks like with a functional Joe Burrow and a healthy Joe Burrow and without him. And that is still the secret ingredient to being able to compete in playoff games and potentially for championships. So that would be close to the top of the list for me for sure.
Yeah, we've seen them overcome holes on the offensive line in the past to get to the playoffs, to win in the playoffs, but not when you enter the season necessarily with that kind of potential hole. That is the one position on offense that gets into the conversation, right? Slot corner is another one on defense that you didn't mention. Like, yeah, starting right guard is probably ahead of starting slot corner.
Yes.
You need that for the way you want to operate your offense more than you need a starting slot corner. If you can't go get a real dude at defensive tackle, I would rather you have a quality right guard than go get just some, average Joe kind of, not average Joe, but like, NFL Joe at defensive tackle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think like linebacker, safety, defensive end, pretty dire in that stratosphere. But yeah, I mean, if this gets to free agency and there's still no starting right guard, if we get through day 2 of free agency and there's still no starting right guard, then that starts to feel extremely alarming, because are you pigeonholing yourself into suddenly drafting a guard at 10? No. I mean, I can't imagine the Bengals are going that route. They're pigeonholing themselves into some other position that they're desperately going to want to draft at 10 and in the 2nd round and in the 3rd round and out of a big school, because that's where they seem to want to play in recent years on day 1 and day 2 of the draft. But where is right guard for you, James? Does it fit in? Like, if we just say, like, right now there's no right guard on the team, does it jump defensive end? Does it jump all the defensive priorities?
Yeah, actually it does. The more I think about it, because I just think, like, let's just say they added 2-star defensive ends and a defensive tackle, and they just don't address guard. You comfortable with Jalen Rivers and Cody Ford competing for that guard spot? Like, just say it out loud. It doesn't feel great. No, the answer is no. Okay. No. Do you trust them to nail another mid-rounder like Dylan Fairchild this time at right guard? No. No. We don't. And so yeah, it actually would, like, the more I think about it, like, if we're sitting here April 15th, like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. The app would suck. So yes, it would be number one, I think, the more I think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because from a big picture football point of view, like, it probably shouldn't be. It probably shouldn't be ahead of, like, going and get, like, you're talking about Trey Hendrickson versus Dalton Reisner, right? Like, that caliber of player potentially, right?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
We're probably not in reality. We're probably not in reality, but let's just say that these are 2 Bengals free agents, right? We think Trey Hendrickson's gone. But in that hypothetical world where it's like you can get a Trey Hendrickson level edge, which I don't think they can this offseason, or and maybe this isn't fair because Trey is just better at his position than Dalton Reisner is at his, or Dalton Reisner right guard, a cromulent, competent right guard, versus no right guard or no defensive end. I think that makes it, a little trickier, but the reality is that they're not going to get a player, very likely, of Trey's caliber this offseason.
And the answer should be both, right? Like,
oh, of course. Yeah. But that's,
and that's it though. And you would factor Trey's money in it, and that would be a whole thing. The point is you got to prioritize guard enough, wherever it is.
Yeah.
Enough, to make sure that you have a good enough guard. And, like, that's it. And historically, this is what's scary. They haven't prioritized guard. And Zach Taylor, I was like, I even asked him, hey, how much do you prioritize guard? And he could tell where I was going, and he started praising Dalton Reisner. I think Duke Tobin hinted at keeping the offensive line intact. So I do think, and not just based on those comments, that the organization wants to keep Dalton Reisner. But until they do it, part of me is just going to be like, I don't know, just because I've been here before. And I've sat in this chair. It might not have been this exact chair, but certainly on this podcast. And we talked about Kevin Zeitler in a reunion during 2021 before that season with Joe Burrow recovering from a torn ACL. Like, the time was now. And it didn't happen. Yeah. And it never got serious, even if Zeitler was open to returning. So, like, that's just one example, not just letting your big free agents go or whiffing in the draft. There are other times when they could have spent mid money on a solid guard, and they opted not to. And so you hope that's not the case here with Dalton Reisner, who probably won't cost as much as Kevin Zeitler did.
I think what the thought exercise illustrates is that there's a bare minimum. Like, there's prioritization, sure, but there are minimums that the Bengals must accomplish this offseason. And that's what the need severity discussion was about yesterday, where I said they can't line up at right guard right now. They don't have a starting right guard. They can't line up at slot corner right now. They don't have a starting slot corner on the team. They don't have a backup quarterback on the team. They can barely line up at defensive end right now. They cannot line up at safety right now. Like, when you're that level of severity of your need, where you can barely line up, or you can't line up, or you have a pressing need. And I think they have a pressing need at linebacker as well, where I think I talked about this 2 days ago. They can line up. They did line up all year with a couple of rookies out there, and it didn't go very well. When you have that level of need at these positions, they must be addressed in some order. And then it's the caliber of player with which you address these needs that comes into question. How good can you get for a pass rusher? How much can you improve from Geno Stone? Those are the questions that I think the prioritization exercise tries to reveal when you understand that, yeah, they need to do something. It's just, what will that something be, and to what degree will that something exist? And that's what the full exercise entails. But do the Bengals see it the same way? How do we think the Bengals see this offseason, given the resources they've spent recently and given their history of we like our own guys or that sort of thing, or how they offer contracts when they have two players at the same position? We'll continue the conversation and get into what we think the Bengals' point of view is coming up next.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Today's show is also brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. I love the NBA. I love going to NBA games. I'm going to use Gametime now that football season is wrapped up to go to NBA games. By the way, Jake, I haven't looked during the combine. I'm hoping the Pacers are in town. Usually they're not, which is always a bummer when I'm in downtown Indianapolis. But the point is, I love the NBA, and if you do too, or if you want to go to whatever live event this offseason, including the big game in a couple of weeks between the Patriots and the Seahawks, well, Gametime is the app you need to go to because it is going to, one, be convenient. It's going to take all the guesswork out of buying tickets. It's going to show you the exact price without any hidden fees. You'll get panoramic views directly from your seats, and you'll find the best deals. And you're going to save money right now by taking the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets and tickets to your favorite live event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today and use promo code LOCKEDON.
I have good news for you, James. The Indiana Pacers appear to be at home during the NFL Combine.
Gametime, here we go. Oh, yeah.
They play on February 24th against Philadelphia and February 26th against Charlotte at home. March 1st against Memphis at home. And the Combine this year runs from February 23rd to March 2nd. So there you go.
The 24th. I think that's the one. Pencil me in.
That's the one.
Yep.
Back to the topic at hand here. We're discussing.
You want to go? You want to fly in? Come on. You want to fly? You want to do it? I'll get your ticket with Gametime.
TBD. I'll let you know.
Little NBA action.
Topic at hand today, James, is where we think the Bengals might essentially disappoint us. We've laid out where our priorities are, and inevitably they will see things differently than we do. They do just about every year. I think you'd have to go way back since they had a free agency. I mean, even going back to when they signed Trey Hendrickson, and turned out they were right about that one and we were wrong. I don't remember if you were doing the show at that point.
I was. I wouldn't say wrong. I was open to it, but I was still, like, everybody was skeptical of Trey because he had only done it for 1 year. And that's going to come with the territory for sure.
And the Bengals got that right. And sometimes they will get things right that we will get wrong. That is the nature of trying to analyze the NFL in a world where if someone was right, even 80% of the time, that would be the highest paid player or highest paid individual in the industry, whether they're on the team side, and they would be on the team side at that point.
Dang.
Or,
I should
or
be then.
On the media side.
Like 94%.
So
Trenchman.
We've heard Duke Tobin talk about where he wants to allocate his resources, talking a lot about the pass rush, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the defense getting better. We've heard the coaching staff talk about how the linebackers got better after the bye, how they developed over the course of the season. Where do you think the biggest gap is between what we expect them to do, what we want them to do, what our standard is for the Bengals to go make moves to improve the team, and what the Bengals think they need to do this offseason?
Man, I think, well, perfect example would have been last year, right? Like, we're going to watch Milton Williams in the Super Bowl. And that's a guy that we know they weren't in on. Is there any reason for them not to be in on Milton Williams? Like, they needed a defensive tackle. They certainly needed a guy that could rush the passer on the interior. They should have been in on Milton Williams. Like, that's it. Now, did the money get crazy and all of those things? Sure, but it's paying off now for the Patriots. And so I think that's it. First, like, the thing that I hate about them is there should not be a free agent that they haven't evaluated and discussed the pros and cons of. And we know for a fact that was the case with Orlando Brown Jr. because they just thought, we're never going to be able to afford Orlando. What are you talking about? Like, all those conversations should be had. So that's really high level, like gap wise. Like, we have all of those talks, whether or not they're realistic or not, whether or not it makes sense to sign Tyler Linderbaum. I would have that conversation because he's a really good player. And if I'm the Bengals, I want as many good players as I can put on my football team. And so that's it. And I mentioned him because he's an unlikely target. It doesn't necessarily make sense, right? In a lot of ways, including what they need on defense. I think that the biggest gap will be what we would be willing to do to address the pass rush versus what they will do and what they think they should do to address the pass rush ahead of the draft. And that's scary to me because if you think about the trenches, the way Duke Tobin claims he thinks about the trenches, then it's on ownership to let him cook and go get the trench help that he wants to get. And that's where I wish they would peel back the curtain, and they never will. Who's on the table, who's not? You better believe Duke Tobin would want Milton Williams if he could go get him, right? And so this offseason, everybody should be on the table trench-wise from a pass rush standpoint because they need that much help.
What's interesting is how that lines up with the class, of course, and we'll talk about the free agency class once we get closer to. As of today, the top guys, and PFF actually just put out their top free agent list.
Yep. I'm looking at it right now.
On the 26th. Trey Hendrickson, guess what? 2 years in a row, the Bengals have the number one free agent according to PFF. T. Higgins last year, Trey Hendrickson this year. Trey Hendrickson will be playing very likely for another team in 2026, whether or not the Bengals can recoup any resources via a tag and trade, which is, again, like an expectation for me that we'll see whether or not they're up to the task for. We'll find out in the coming months. Odafe Owa is the next guy. Yep. And Jalen Phillips is in the conversation. He's had his injury issues, had the medical retirement in college that he came back from, of course. Boy Mafe in the top 25 or so. Joey Bosa. Like, are any of these guys we think they'll be interested in? Maybe Boy Mafe. Like, are the price tags going to scare them off? Or are they actually going to be willing to go out there and say, you know what? We were spending a lot of money on Trey. Yeah, we'll go spend a lot of money on an edge rusher.
They better. Like, my God, they better. Like, there's no way you can say no way to Owe. Like, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe you don't get him. But Odafe should be at the top of their list. Is there any debate there? Like, if you're letting Trey go, that should be the guy, right? I mean, who else?
I just wonder how they see it, you know? Like, this is one of those things where it's the Bengals, right? So you think about how the Bengals think, and this applies to linebacker too. They spent 2 first-round picks on defensive ends.
Yeah.
They know they need pass rush. They know it. They spent two picks on linebackers that started for them last year. They know they need to be better at linebacker, but they just spent resources on it. Are they going to do it again? I'm skeptical about this team in a lot of ways this year, James. I've said I'll believe it when I see it many times. This goes right into the restructure conversations for Joe Burrow's contract to free up cap space and show that you're actually going to push the envelope and spend a little bit of cash this year. These are the questions I'm asking today here on January 27th.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
And it's a question that I hope Duke Tobin, Katie Blackburn, and Troy Blackburn, and it's mostly Katie and Troy, Mike to a lesser degree. I think Mike's on board. I think I could convince Mike Brown to sign Odafe Owe. I do. But I have a question. Obviously, it's going to be about Owe. And we can get to that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. If you look at the big game, man, oh man, the Super Bowl is almost here. And FanDuel, not only are they an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, but they're the place you need to go right now for all things Seahawks and Patriots. Obviously, it spices things up. And look, it's one final Sunday, one last kickoff, one last game. Going into Championship Sunday, Jake, I was like, I don't care. Obviously, I was snowed in anyway, but I have 3 football games left. I'm going to enjoy all 3. And now we're down to 1. And FanDuel is going to help you enjoy it that much more. And if you're a new customer with FanDuel, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. That's $200 in bonus bets if you win with FanDuel. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Jake, let's get to my question here. Because Odafe Owe, he's going to cost so much money, right? And this applies to Milton Williams. This applies to whoever you want to. If the Bengals sign Owe and it doesn't work, is anyone that matters, because there's always somebody, but is anyone that matters going to say, man, oh man, you shouldn't have spent money on that 27-year-old former first-round pick that just had 7.5 sacks and played in all 17 games and was really, really disruptive for the Chargers? Is anybody going to say that? I don't think so. But what do you think?
I mean, anyone that matters, yeah, that's the good caveat. I'm sure there will be people that think like, oh, they shouldn't go after Owe, they should go after Boy Mafe, or they should go get Joey Bosa and get, there will be people that have those opinions.
Sure.
They should
always better than Bosa. Always better than Bosa. Like objectively regard. Like I couldn't imagine anyone that thinks otherwise.
Bosa is a better pass rusher when he is healthy. That is a big if. I mean, it's an if for everybody in the NFL, but Bosa.
I don't think Bosa was good this year based on what some of the Buffalo people have said. But the PFF grade looks good. So
he was a good pass rusher. Then he started dealing with injuries, but he's a pass rusher.
And by the way, the same thing applies to him. If they go get Joey Bosa, I'm not going to say, just to be clear, I'm not going to be like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. The point is we need you to swing. We need you to step up to the plate. And I'm not going to blame you for striking out if you try. I don't blame them for Geno Stone from they signed a safety. Kind of blame the process a little bit. I wonder how short-sighted it was. Cam Curl was out there as well. I don't think it was as simple as, just sign Geno Stone and that's it. Like it almost felt too simple going into that free agency, if you remember. But at least they did it.
Yeah.
At least they did it. Like, they didn't know that he was going to lunge his shoulder and press the Y button at the wrong time too often. Like I think they just assumed, yeah, he'll tackle a little better and he'll be a solid player. And he just wasn't. And so you just got to swing is my point. Like that's the bare minimum. You can't be like, oh, well, it could go wrong. Well, yeah, welcome. That's life. It could go wrong. And Joe said that too. When I asked him about free agents earlier this month, he was like, sometimes you have misses, but you got to keep signing and trying to get better.
To their credit, the last time they had a serious free agent miss, Trey Waynes, right? Like that, I guess Sheldon Rankins, but Trey Waynes.
Yep.
Sheldon Rankins for sure. There's a lot going on there, but
that's not that many really. Like swing. Like Nick Scott was a low end signing. That doesn't really.
Yeah. I'm talking big money stuff. Like they were on the hook for Trey Waynes for 2 years and he barely played. And that was a guy that at the time we're like, you're spending too much money on Trey Waynes. And I don't think Owe would be like that. That's why I bring it up. Owe is not in that world where it's like, that is a clear overpay. Like, what are you guys doing? And I'm trying to think of like where I would think that. Like if they paid top of market money to
Nakobe Dean.
I can't even come like K'Lavon Chason. That would be the one to
as a pass rusher. Yeah.
Sure. Like Chason is fine. But if you go overpay for him because of, some sacks or like whatever it is, whatever the reason is, that becomes problematic. But just for comparison's sake, since I'm looking at this, I went back and I looked at Trey Hendrickson's some Trey Hendrickson numbers before the Bengals signed him in year 4 of his NFL career, his last year with the Saints. I looked at his pass rush win rate. Yep. And I looked at his true pass set win rate and I looked at his run stop rate. Trey Hendrickson at age 26 in his fourth year in the NFL last year with the Saints, had a pass rush win rate of 12%, a true pass rush win rate, according to PFF, all of these numbers, of 20%, and a run stop rate of 4.6%. But Odafe Owe last year was at 16% overall, which is better than Trey overall. And on true pass sets was at 19.2%, which is just a little bit worse, about 1% worse than Trey, who was at 20.2%. I don't know the run stop rate in front of me here, but in terms of pass rush productivity, Owe was ahead of Trey. I think probably this is measuring, it's weighting towards sacks and hits, and Owe had 11 sacks according to PFF charting. I also looked at Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips in the same general territory here, and also the same age as Trey. He's just had 5 years in the NFL, and he missed 2 years. He missed a whole bunch of games in his fourth year and a whole bunch of games, half the season or so, in his third year. Trey Hendrickson only played in 6 games in his second year, so he also had 1 year that he dealt with some injuries. But just wanted to throw those things out there. If you're looking at some of the pass rushing data that we have and comparing it to Trey Hendrickson before he arrived in Cincinnati and took a significant step, he was much better in Cincinnati than he was with the Saints when he started to ascend.
Well, and that's why there were questions after they signed him and paid him and let Carl Lawson walk. And it was like, all right, well, can Trey be that guy? And he quickly answered it. But there were questions. The Bengals bet on him. And I think that's part of the situation with him. It's they're like, man, we took a risk with you. And yeah, it worked. But don't instantly ask for more right away. And, whatever. But like, I think from early on in the process, it's been a grind. And find the next guy that's going to do that to you. That's going to just overperform. I'm not going to blame you if you take that risk on Jalen Phillips. Like, you can literally tell me and say, oh, Bosa, he's the best when healthy. We'll take the injury risk. We need him every January. Like, fine. Like, if that's what you want to do it. Mafe, if you want to do that, well, do Mafe and Bosa. If it's Phillips instead of Owe, fine. If it's Owe instead of Phillips, fine. The point is, there's options, and you can't get scared away. And if you do your job and you're willing to take a swing, then you should be able to get it right.
But weigh the odds for me. Like, do we think they will? This whole conversation starts with, do we think that they do see this as the way that we see this? Is this a place where they diverge from where we think they should be?
I think they have to. You know why? You know why I think they have to? Because 9 is watching very, very closely. And this is so I had a question for them a few minutes ago, and now I'll let them know. Did you see the clip of Joe Burrow playing piano?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Well, he's a football player, and he's going to play football, and he's not going to retire anytime soon. But that football playing, it doesn't have to necessarily happen in Cincinnati. And so you better show him that you're willing to add to the defense, because all of the things, I bet you Joe agrees on a lot of what we say when it comes to team building and being willing to go in and push your chips in a bit and do those things. Like, he watches all that stuff, like watches what they do, to be clear. And I bet you he agrees on a lot of it. And I think that there are a lot of guys in that locker room, even the leaders, that would admit, and this is more of an educated statement, just to be clear, that the Bengals need to be more aggressive in general in the Joe Burrow era. They just need to be more aggressive. And that includes obviously adding in free agency.
Especially the guys that really pay attention to the cap and those sorts of things, that really pay attention to cash spend. The things that don't just impact their day-to-day, right? Like the big picture stuff that we look at.
You better believe that Joe is
Joe for sure. Yeah.
Yes. And
he's made very clear that he understands the various cap mechanisms out there, at least at a level that is higher than most players. I don't think most players really do pay attention to it that closely, but Joe, no. I agree with you. He does. Yeah. I think they're going to be roughly in line with our expectations of safety. I think they'll go sign a starting safety. I think they'll sign a starting guard. I think they'll sign a starting slot corner. Actually,
that might be Jalen Davis. That might be Jalen Davis.
And they might draft a guy. Defensive tackle, linebacker, two of the biggest areas of concern for me. Backup quarterback, another one that's a bit of an area of concern for me, but linebacker, defensive tackle are two where I wonder how they see it I wonder how much they really believe in those linebackers that they talked up and how much better they played after the bye. And they played a little better. They did, but and linebackers take year 2 leaves, but are you really trusting that when that was
Well,
such an Achilles heel? And are you really trusting your defensive tackle room and not trying to get that's where we are. I wonder where they are given the resources they spent, the money they spent on BJ Hill. Are they going to keep TJ Slayton around with his old defensive line coach that brought him in specifically? Or they're expecting, Chris Jenkins to continue to get better in his 3rd year. How much do they really spend at defensive tackle?
Yeah.
Do they really think they need to go get a linebacker, or are they going to go get a $3 million guy instead of paying for Leo Chenal kind of thing? Those are my questions and some of my biggest concerns at those couple spots, James.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I think it's twofold. One, I think that they're probably we need to be better than Oren Burks. I don't think they necessarily trusted him. I do think they were better. But when you're at 0 and then you get to 20, let's say, and it's out of 100, yeah, you're better than 0. But you were the worst in the league. And Barrett Carter wore the green dot for a reason, man. They believe in him. And Demetrius Knight's a 2nd-round pick. So history would tell us that they have a big plan for those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. I think that that's the one area where, if you're penciling in, oh, they're going to sign this veteran to come in and shore up the linebacker room. I don't know if I see it. And I think that might be last on the list. And I'm okay with that to a degree if we're talking about this sandbox where you're looking at Owe and Mafe and Bosa and Phillips, and they're probably making faces hearing those names right now. But if you told me you get Bosa and Mafe, but you don't get whatever at linebacker, it's oh, well, could the pass rush with Stewart and with whatever you get in the draft, and I'm willing to sacrifice that, or a defensive tackle that has some pass rush juice in one of those edges I mentioned. Okay, you could convince me that that's fine, but is it a risk? It is, and I think that's what they're going to have to determine. Do they want a bunch of middle of the pack, or are they going to go to that next level at pass rusher, which would eat into however they view linebacker, knowing them, and they may just be comfortable with their 2nd and 4th round picks.
I would hope, and we'll see if they see it this way. I would hope that they looked at the way they used Demetrius Knight this year and they said, you know what, we should get a guy that is more suited to the role that we had predicted for Demetrius Knight, and it didn't work. We can't put him on the line of scrimmage anymore. We can't be asking him to take on poolers and tight ends, and he just didn't do a good enough job of that. Maybe we can go get a guy that's the same age and Leo Chenal, same age, younger actually, and get better there.
Sure.
That's kind of my hope. That's maybe my cope at linebackers, that they look at the role specifically. Maybe they have a different plan for Demetrius Knight after seeing him play for a full year. And they're like, you know what? He's better at these things, and we shouldn't ask him to do these other things anymore. He's a pretty good blitzer. Maybe we can ask him to do some blitzing or something, but maybe we shouldn't ask him to take on the big bodies in the run game. Or maybe they just expect him to be better, because that is something we've seen the Bengals do before. I also, I think alluded to this.
That's what's tough.
I know. We alluded to the, yeah, and 2nd round picks definitely have more. They've been a little bit tighter on the leash for 3rd round picks. Zach Carter, Jermaine Burton, McKinley Jackson. 2nd round pick, a bit of a different story. The other thing that I really hope they don't do, that I think we alluded to earlier this week, is do the thing where they offer DJ Turner and Dax Hill the same contract and let one of them pick it. One of them take it, and whichever one takes it first gets it. I don't want to see them play that game again.
That would be where we would be way off too. That would be the other example of us being so far removed. Because I think everyone knows that listens how I feel about Dax in general. DJ blew up. Get those deals done, because can you imagine if DJ plays another year like he did last year, but for a full year, what he's going to want?
He's going to get good money. He's going to be a free agent.
Because right now you can say, well, you did it for half year. Let's take a team friendly deal. We're going to keep your guy Dax. as well. Like you can kind of tandem it and pay him well, but not pay him like top of market. Like if he does it again, it is top of market, like top of the top of the top. And what the Bengals would say is, yeah, you don't think DJ knows that too? And it's like, yeah, he's got a second round contract, right? He wants to get paid. So get him paid, but do it reasonably. So you can thrive a year from now and it feels like it's a good deal.
And that's how you get corners mocked to the Bengals at 10 with Caleb Downs on the board and infuriate the entire fan base. Shout out DJ. Speaking of DJs, talking about a lot of DJs here. DJ Reader, by the way, just throwing it out there. Number 20 on PFF's top free agents list for 2026.
Never should have let him go.
Let's wrap up there, James, on this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast.
Frenchman is back.
We've got the Senior Bowl to talk about this week.
What a show.
We're watching all sorts of coaching news around the NFL. The Bills going with Joe Brady for head coach. We'll see what happens up in Cleveland. The AFC North might be set by the next time you hear from us. Maybe we'll talk about the AFC North head coaching picture in the near future as well. Until then, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.